Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be talking about changes that I think Critical Role should make for Campaign 4. Now, I don't think there's going to be any spoilers, but spoiler warnings for Campaign 3, because that'll be the one I talk about the most. So, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Now, I do want to point out that none of these are in any particular order. They're just in an order. I did, however, divide it into, in-game stuff to real-world stuff. So stuff that's going to be focused around, like, in the world of Exandria, and then stuff that's going to be, like, real-world things that they could change to, in my opinion, either benefit them or us, the viewers. So the first thing I believe that they should change for this campaign, Campaign 4, is to set it hundreds, if not thousands of years after the events of Campaign 3. This will really let us sink in the idea that things have changed. There will be tons of time to pass, and theoretically, depending on how the gods work and if they can be reincarnated or if it was only one life cycle and they had to pass their mantles to someone else, it'll truly solidify to us what this means and who is now a god and where they are. I also think it'll just be very beneficial for them to have it be this far into its own time frame. That way it doesn't connect back to anything prior, and there aren't really too many recurring characters, and realistically the entire cities could be changed. Like cities, continents, everything could be changed, reformed. Some pieces of it could sink away. Maybe some druids decided to pull some pieces back up. Who knows? But I think thousands or hundreds of years later would be very good, because this way we can basically have it be its own setting again. So the next change I think they should make is they should have no references whatsoever to prior campaigns. Now, this isn't going to be possible potentially, but what I'm saying about this is no references to the Mighty Nine, Vox Machina, Bell's Hells, Aurora, Keyleth, Vax, any of those characters. Referencing gods and new gods and stuff like that is okay, and old locations, but I think we should really have this campaign be focused on itself. One of the weaker points of Campaign 3, in my opinion, was how much it kind of relied on the previous two campaigns, and now there was a ton of references towards said previous campaigns. So realistically, to sort of leave that behind and let this campaign breathe on its own and become its own thing will be very strong for it. I think that's one of the reasons Campaign 2 was so successful. You didn't need to watch Campaign 1 to enjoy it, and while that is technically true for Campaign 3, you will understand more about it if you watch the prior two campaigns. So, we should do the opposite for this one. We should allow this one to be its own thing, to let it truly stand on its own 2 feet and become its own thing, so that people don't feel like they have to watch stuff that came before. And I feel like that might have been a hurdle for Campaign 3. So to not do that would be a huge benefit for Campaign 4. So the last change I think they should make for story-wise stuff, this isn't the last change in the video, but for story-wise stuff, I think the last change they should make should be to not do one long continuous story. Now, where should they go? Should they go back to Campaign 1 where, certain arcs would sort of connect to each other and they'd skip an arc that has its own thing and then go back to connecting to other things? Maybe. Should they do Campaign 2 where they basically focused on player character stuff for the most part and then eventually had some connecting dots? Or should they do something completely separate yet again? I don't know. I think either of those options is fine, or any of those options are fine. I personally just think that doing one long continuous story makes it harder for people to watch. And the reason I think that's the case is because they can't just pick up at the start of the next arc. I think one of the good things that Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 did, if you weren't feeling the arc, you could wait for it to end, and then theoretically pick up in the next arc. You might miss a few things, but realistically, since most of the arcs don't truly connect to each other outside of who the main characters are and maybe a few other characters who show up, I truly believe that you can skip full-on arcs in the prior two campaigns. Campaign 3, you couldn't do that, otherwise you'd miss a ton of important characters that were still relevant from beginning to end. You'd miss important story beats that are relevant the entire time. So realistically, one long story means that you're going to alienate people who don't want to watch that story. But if you do arcs where a bunch of different stuff don't connect, people who don't like that arc can take a break and then come back later for new stuff. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit for them to go back to doing for Campaign 4. So now we're going to move into more real life stuff that I think they should change to improve for themselves and for viewership at home. The first thing I think they should do is they should go back to recording live. Now, the reason I think they should do this is because there's a lot of times during their talk show stuff, like Four-Sided Dive, or even, other sort of interviews they did outside of it, they would question what they were allowed to talk about because they might have been pre-recording, one episode might not have been out yet at the time, or something along those lines. So if they were to go back to doing live stuff, first and foremost, that wouldn't be a problem, because we'd all be caught up with each other. So it would be no real big issue. Also, I think it'd be a lot of fun for them to go back to, interacting with the live chat. Stuff like that used to happen all the time in Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 up until COVID hit, and then Campaign 2 went pre-recorded. So, there's moments like Laura forgetting where she put something in her binder, but one of the chat members remembered where she put it. So Travis was able to read the chat, tell Laura about it, and they found the thing. And I think that's cool and really fun. And other stuff like that, along those lines. So I think that would be a lot of fun for them to do. I don't think this is going to happen. I think they like what they're doing now with how they pre-record stuff and then upload it, but I would like to see them go back to live because the live shows are so much fun. And theoretically, they could have that same feel on a smaller scale during a live stream. So this next point sort of assumes they're not going to stop pre-recording. They won't be returning to the live streams. So in this case, I see no reason as to why they take the last week of every month off. I don't understand this idea. I really just don't get it. Especially if they're pre-recording stuff, I don't get why they don't pre-record 2 episodes in a week. If they want to take a week off for the last week themselves personally and their crew personally, I see no reason why they can't do 2 days in a row of playing the game that are only 4 to 5 hours. And I know that sounds like that sounds greedy, I get it, but I just don't see why not. I do think that this would improve the pacing of the campaign a lot better. Pacing was an issue for Campaign 3, where suddenly something huge would happen, and then we'd get a week off. 2 weeks off, depending on if it was a holiday as well. 3 weeks off, depending on if it was a really weird holiday or something like that. So sometimes this did happen. So I see no reason as to why they're not just batch recording at least once, right? They do 3 weeks in a row where they play, and then on one of those weeks, they do 2 gaming sessions. I think that would be huge for them to be able to put stuff out constantly, because stopping and going and stopping and going and stopping and going isn't good for anybody. And I personally think a lot of people would have been a lot more on board with Campaign 3 and understanding of how things went if it didn't take weeks in between for certain episodes to come out, right? An episode would happen, we'd have to wait 2 weeks, another episode would come out. And by the time that 2 weeks passed, people are kind of like, oh yeah, I remember this now. I kind of lost hype for it. So realistically, to keep hype, we shouldn't stop uploading. I don't know. That sounds greedy. I am greedy, but I want more because I really enjoy this shit. So now I'm going to touch on side stories, EXU type stuff, downfall type stuff. If you're going to do side stories, I don't think they should connect to the main plot, and I don't think you should do them during a very important portion of an arc. You should wait for an arc to end and then do it. The big one, I think we all know what the big one was when that happened. Episode 91, episode 92, episode 93 was the thing specifically I'm talking about here. That did not go over well with a lot of people because we wanted to spend time on this moment. We wanted to reflect on this moment, but we quickly got thrusted into something else. I understand the idea they were going for to try to alleviate tension from some of the stuff that was happening, because that was a rough instance that happened in episode 91. So realistically, I get the idea behind what happened. However, I would have liked to have spent another episode with the characters to sort of go over how they feel about it before jumping into the other thing. I don't see why that didn't happen, and that way, theoretically, they could have just given Abria a full episode instead of 2 half episodes. So, I don't know. Maybe that would have been better. Who knows? And then to sort of follow up on that, they immediately, almost instantly after this happened, only a couple sessions later, Downfall started. That was 2 in a row. 2, the tomb, or the Crown Keepers came back, and then 4 or 5 episodes later or something like that, there were the Downfall stuff. So I think doing it that close was kind of rough because we're watching Critical Role. We want to watch the cast of Critical Role. We don't want to watch the cast of Critical Role's friends, if that makes sense. If we're going to do it, I want it to be labeled EXU and it to happen after an arc ends. I think that would be a perfect way for them to do it. That is almost exactly what happened with Calamity, and it was fucking perfect. So my second last point has almost nothing to do with anything outside of the time zone I live in and time zones that other people live in. It does not need to be 5 hours long on a regular basis. The episodes can be 4.5 hours long, and I will be 100% content and happy with this. I don't see why there is a bunch of episodes that go beyond this point. I seriously don't see it, especially because a lot of them that do go beyond that 4.5 hour mark they're fucking all RP episodes. There's not even combat to justify it. So personally, I think it would be a lot better if they just stuck to 4.5 hours. But I understand them not wanting to do that because they're just playing their game and they're enjoying it. So my alternative to that, give us the video or the stream earlier, especially if they're pre-recorded. If they're pre-recorded videos or VODs or whatever the heck you want to call them, I see no reason as to why they don't give it to us sooner. For me, Critical Role starts at 10 p.m. 10 p.m., people. And I understand there's other people even further out east than me. People in the UK. People in, other parts of Europe. People in Asia. People in Australia. I feel your pain. Except yours is probably 4 times worse than mine. So realistically, I don't see why it's not given to us sooner. Especially on Beacon. If you want to incentivize people to go to Beacon, give them the fucking episodes first. I understand why they don't. They want to avoid spoilers. It doesn't matter. There was one time during Campaign 3 where I was late to a episode of Critical Role on Thursday. One time. I was 30 minutes late, and something was spoiled for me instantly. I came home, opened my phone, and the first thing I saw, I didn't even, click on anything. My phone was already on the app. And guess what? A spoiler right away. You don't get to avoid it. It's just something that's going to happen. So I think this incentivizes people to get Beacon, by the way. If you give us, the Beacon people, their Critical Role sooner, other people are going to be like, oh, I get my Critical Role sooner, and I can press pause, and I can rewind it, and there's great subtitles on Beacon? Shit, why am I still paying for Twitch? Why am I still paying for YouTube? By the way, if they do this, it means Twitch and YouTube can't take any of the money they get. It goes right to their pocket. I don't see why this hasn't happened already. They should absolutely give us Critical Role sooner, especially if it's pre-recorded on Beacon. It'll make Beacon worth 10 times more, and I also think it'll help Beacon with not crashing, because a bunch of people are going to be like, oh, it's 6 p.m. on the Eastern Standard Time. I can wait a couple hours before watching this still. It means I can still start watching at 8 and be done by 12. That's huge. That would be huge, especially for me. That would be huge for me. Again, this sounds greedy. I'm fucking greedy in this moment. I would love it to not be so late when I watch Critical Role. And the last change that I would make to Campaign 4, I would give up everything else that I've already said. I will take whatever the hell they hand me. I will already do that, but I will doubly take whatever the hell they hand me if they give me this last thing. This last thing is, make Robbie Daymond a permanent player. Fuck calling him a guest. He's a player at this point. He melds so well with the rest of the gang. He just fits in so well. It's perfect. And this way we can still technically have guest characters. Like, we saw 10 people at the table. If we only do one at a time, that's only 9. That's reasonable. That's fair. That's fun. I don't think adding Robbie Daymond to the table permanently screws guests. Now, he did say he's a rather busy guy, so that might not work for him completely. But man, wouldn't it just be so wonderful to have Robbie Daymond every time? Every time we opened up the stream, episode 50, there he is. It would be great. And I know you all agree with me. So, yeah, that's my last one. So there you have it, the changes that I would make, or the changes that I think Critical Role should make for Campaign 4. Let me know what you think. I know a handful of you are going to agree with me on the time zone thing and Robbie Daymond. So I'm curious what you think about the other things, because, I feel like I've hit the nail on the head perfectly with that one, or those two. So let me know, I'm curious. And what other changes would you make? I know these are, my 8 changes that I would make. So I'm curious to know if there's any more that you guys can come up with. So, as long as we're not removing cast members, I think I'm going to be okay reading some of these changes. Do not remove cast members in your suggestions. Please don't. So with that all being said, I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of EXU Divergence Episode 2, or I could give you a sneak preview into the next week following, because I'm pretty sure the following week there is no video to recap. So, with that being said, on Tuesday, I'm going to be potentially, these videos can swap places depending on how long it takes for me to make them, by the way. On Tuesday, you're either going to see a Campaign 4, class predictions list for the players, and on the next Friday, or depending, like I said, how well and how fast I make these, you could see the best moments of Campaign 3. How many moments? 5? No. 10? No. 15? No. 20? No. That would be reasonable. I am very unreasonable. 25? No. Because again, I'm unreasonable. I'm going with 30 moments. My favorite moments, 30 of them total, for Campaign 3. So, yeah, that's going to be a long-ass video. So I will see you guys then. Well, technically, I'll see you guys first this Friday. But anyway, I digress. I'll see you guys later. Peace.